We are continuing with Psalm 75. For the leader, Al Tashchet, a psalm of Asaph, a song. We praise you, O God, we praise you. Your presence is near. Men tell of your wondrous deeds. At the time I choose, I will give judgment equitably. Earth and all its inhabitants dissolve. It is I who keep its pillars firm. Selah. To wanton men I say, do not be wanton. To the wicked, do not lift up your horns. Do not lift your horns up high in vainglorious bluster. For what lifts a man comes not from the east or the west or the wilderness. For God it is who gives judgment. He brings down one man, he lifts up another. There's a cup in the Lord's hand, with foaming wine fully mixed. From this he pours. All the wicked of the earth drink, draining it to the very dregs. As for me, I will declare forever, I will sing a hymn to the God of Jacob. All the horns of the wicked I will cut, but the horns of the righteous shall be lifted up. In this psalm, there are 4 verses that are actually meant to be quotes from God. In verses 3 through 5, the psalmist has God saying, at the time I choose, I will give judgment equitably, and so on. To wanton men I say, do not be wanton. To the wicked, do not lift up your horns. That is meant to be God speaking. And also at the very end, verse 11, the psalmist has God saying, all the horns of the wicked I will cut, but the horns of the righteous shall be lifted up. So we have the word horns appearing 4 times in this psalm. And we also have a lot of lifting up going on here. We have the arrogant, the wicked people lifting themselves up, in a sense lifting themselves up over the rest of humanity in their arrogance, looking down on everyone else and believing that they can get away with anything they want to. And we also have the lifting up of the horns of the righteous at the end of the psalm. And then we have this word horns, which turns out to be, in this particular context, used as a contronym or an auto-antonym. So lest you accuse me of being a little bit too highbrow here, let me explain what I mean. A contronym or an auto-antonym is a word that has actually contradictory or opposite meanings in itself. The way the word and the symbol of horn is used in this psalm is used for contradictory purposes. The very last verse, the horns of the wicked I will cut. What do horns mean there? There it means horns as a symbol of arrogance and haughtiness, and it is used elsewhere in the Bible for that purpose. Horns of the arrogant or of the wicked, but also the horns of the righteous. And there, the word horn is a symbol of dignity and might. So in one moment, horn as a sign of arrogance and haughtiness, and the very next breath, horns as a sign of dignity and might. In one breath, negative, and in the very next breath, positive. Interesting. I can only think in today's day and age of the use of a term in the same kind of way, not exactly the same, but close. A term that can be at once positive and in the very next moment negative. And curiously, the word I choose to use as an example here is the word positive. Think of COVID-19 testing. If the test comes back positive, that's not a good thing, right? It's a negative thing, but it's positive because the results are positive. If somebody gets tested for cancer and, God forbid, the results are positive, that is not what anyone wants. Instead, what we want is a negative result. But negative in this context is good, positive is bad. So, sounds a little bit confusing, right? But using this example from the world of modern medicine, I know that you understand what I mean here. In today's age of the pandemic, we have the reality of COVID-19. There is so much about it that is negative and destructive. All the deaths, all the illness, the way our society and our economy are suffering, the way many elements of our society are breaking down in terms of our cohesiveness. But in the same breath, we can look at the pandemic and understand that there is so much at the same time that is good, that is positive in a good sense. And that is when we can learn to appreciate our homes, our family life, the love that we hold for one another in our families and our communities, and that in itself is something positive that can come out of this. In our places, our houses of worship, we can come together as a faith community, even though not necessarily in person, but through the computer or through telephone, technology, whatever we use, we can become even more cohesive and strengthened as faith communities as we endure the current trials and tribulations of the pandemic. What looks negative can really become positive in a good sense. And in that way, we can draw nearer to God and we can bring God closer to us. Near the beginning of the psalm, the psalmist says, "We praise you, O God, we praise you, your presence is near." As we learn to praise God, even during times of suffering and sadness, if we can still find that room for positivity, that light that beams in onto our lives and our existence, in doing that, we draw closer to God and we bring God closer to us through those words of praise as we tell of God's wondrous deeds, as the psalmist puts it. God did not make this virus, I believe. God does not cause the suffering that we go through, but God's wondrous deeds are channeled through the deeds and acts of men and women who, through their heroism and strength, continue to provide care for those who are suffering and ill. God's wondrous deeds is channeled through the faith and strength of all those who find ways to unite together and strengthen our bonds as human beings who are going through, all of us together, the trials of the current pandemic. God's wondrous deeds are enacted through our continuous acts of faith and our ability to continue to stay close to God and keep God close to us in our lives. And that in itself is a wonder. With this, we are concluding with this Psalm 75, one half of all of the 150 Psalms that I am taking the time to share with you. And so it's a time for me, just for a moment, to thank you for joining me in my own spiritual journey as I go through each and every one of these Psalms and try to find personal meaning for myself, and also to share some of that meaning and some of those insights with those of you who are listening in. For me, it has been a valuable project. I plan to continue it, hopefully until I have completed all of the Psalms. And I want to take this moment to express my profound and sincere appreciation to you for joining me in this journey, in this exploration of one of the greatest works of faith and of literature throughout many, many centuries. The Psalms, a work that continues to give comfort and strength to this very day. May the Psalms and may the words contained therein always give us a deepened feeling of faith and love for one another and for God. Thank you.